Greg Hill, worldsbestsalestrainer.com, and welcome to our How to Sell video series. This is step 2 of the 5 steps of the sales call. To see the whole series and an overview, just go to our website, worldsbestsalestrainer.com, and you'll see on the left hand side there's a little place for you to register. It's free, and you'll be able to see this and many other videos, and there's a lot more. The introduction is designed to build a strong foundation for the entire sales presentation. It is not designed to sell your product or service, but instead help create rapport or a relationship with the prospect or client. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've worked with thousands of salespeople. We're all afraid of getting cut off right when we get started. So we have a tendency to get right into the meat of the sales presentation in order to get out what we think is important before we might get cut off. I can tell you that if you hold back a little bit and you're able to establish a rapport and create some believability, the person that you're speaking to is much less likely to either hang up the phone or to tell you that you have to leave. Now, on the other hand, don't go into 20 minutes of small talk either. You need to keep this as short as absolutely possible so that you don't lose their attention. But at the same time, you need an introduction. Now, the introduction, 4 basic elements to it. ICR, a brief product or service overview, a credibility statement, and a validation statement. So we're going to go through these one at a time here. Now, the whole purpose of the ICR, or the interest creating remark, is to elicit a positive response from the prospect or the client. This remark can be as mundane as, hey, how's the weather? To, I noticed you painted the place. It could also be something about a former relationship or maybe a mutual friend. But whatever it is, it should be something that is created or formulated to elicit a positive response. If you don't get a positive response, try another one and try a few more until you get the positive response, unless you just think he's testing you, and then just move on. The other thing that I always do is I always think of the ICR on my way to the prospect or before I pick up the phone. Now, I will tell you, many times I'll dump them if I see something else that's more interesting that I think is going to work better as I'm walking in. But for the most part, I pretty much want to know what my ICR is going to be before I meet the person. Also gives me a little bit of confidence because I don't have to think on my feet as much, which I'm going to be doing the whole time anyways. So it takes a little pressure off if you already know what you're going to talk about, and you can deliver it fairly smoothly, and the people are going to usually respond in the way that you want them to. The next element to the introduction is a brief product or service overview. Now, this is not a mini sales pitch, but an objective explanation of what the product or service you'll be talking about. By the way, if you see me looking down, I'm just reading notes right below the camera. I'm not trying to give you some kind of misguided nonverbal cue. This has happened to me on several occasions where I have made an appointment several weeks ahead of time, even taken a day or 2 or 3 to plan the sales presentation, gotten there, and the person had no idea why I'm there. Because when I was talking to them, they were hot on this particular subject, and now maybe they've moved on to something else. So it's always good to remind them without letting them know that you're reminding them of what the whole sales presentation is going to be about. Try to keep this to 1 sentence if possible. It shouldn't be very long. It should be something very, very quick that you do right after you do your ICR. In the introduction is a credibility statement. Now, this is a statement about either you or your company, and it's meant to position you over your competition. It's also meant to position yourself in their mind as somebody who's worth listening to. So it should be humble in nature, but at the same time, it should be something that establishes you as either an expert, somebody who's more creative than everybody that you speak to, or somebody who's more successful than the other people. But there's got to be a reason why it's worth their time to listen to you. We're almost done with the introduction. The last element is the validation statement, and this is a little complex, so please bear with me. The main objective is for you to validate the prospect or the prospect's business. Now you can do this usually in one of two ways. One is you pick something that they are proud of. Like for example, Google. If you are at a party and somebody says that they work at Google, they're going to be very proud. It's almost like the room will come to a silence if somebody works for Google in certain circles. Now, what you want to do is apply that same kind of pride that you see from somebody like that worked at IBM or Google or Microsoft, and you want to apply that same kind of pride to a prospect or a client. So you're going to say, wow, that's great. You guys have been doing this for a really long time. Well, from what I understand, you pretty much invented this business. Something that's going to give them pride in their business. Now the other thing, if that isn't a really good strategy for whatever reason, you can also choose something that they're doing. Like let's say you're being brought in to do a project, or there's an expansion and you're selling the furniture, or you're doing the advertising, or whatever it is. You can say, well, this is really making my job easy because you guys are doing this thing right. And because you're doing it right, it's going to make my job a lot easier, and it's going to save you a lot of time and money. So by validating what they're doing or who they are, this will give them the concept that you've done a little bit of homework and that you understand where they're coming from. Also remember that this is the time of the sales call where they're sizing you up. And one of the best ways to get good marks and being sized up is to talk about somebody in a really positive manner. So that's pretty much the validation remark, and so in summary, there's 4 elements to a good introduction. An ICR, which is the acronym for interest creating remark, a brief product or service overview, a credibility remark, and a validation remark. Now I'm going to do an example of one. This is obviously something that I've just made up for this video, so don't follow it word by word, but look at the way it's structured, and this way you can create your own introduction that's going to make sense for the next time you're on a sales call. Over the last 10 years, it sure has, says Mr. Prospect. Hey, I want to thank you for considering my company, Greg Media, to do your outbound sales calls. I'll tell you this. The offer that you guys had at the trade show, the risk-free, if I can propose that to new clients, this is going to make my job so easy. Keep the introduction really short and clean, and then move on to the next step.